Hey there, welcome back to more Broken Arrow. Today playing the US Special Forces and Stryker group. This means a very mobile deck, heavily focused on infantry, a couple of vehicles for fire support such as the M10 Booker, as well as of course the Strykers themselves. Very mobile. Staying power, not as good, but if you got a map like this where you got quite a few forests, you have some options. So, let's get to it. I'm teamed up with Chancellor David Medicus and BK, who's a familiar name from Wargame and Guastatore. Especially him and I are going to be doing quite a bit of work on the left. Hope you'll enjoy. For this video I'm doing the commentary afterwards. During the game I really have to focus on the actual game. So I know that some people prefer to have me do the commentary on the game. I don't think that would work that well. Simply because I can't focus enough. Alright, so let's start with air. What are we going to open with? You've got so many different options, so many different vehicles, so many different ways to get you guys there. I was trying to see how many could fit in an MC-130, and unfortunately you cannot just deploy an infantry group and a Stryker. Stryker's a bit too heavy, so if you want to deploy a Stryker from an aircraft, you're going to have to bring a specific aircraft for a Stryker. What I always bring at the very least is a fighter, so that's what the F-22 is there, and then we're going to fly in some additional troops. So I'm going to go with Troopers AA, making sure I have some anti-air, standard troopers, and of course I'm going to need some reconnaissance, so there's the scouts. I tend to bypass objectives first, and then capture them when I have time. Because the other way around is potentially more difficult. You can capture an objective, but if you then find it very difficult to defend because you don't have an advantageous position, you're going to have to work twice as hard. Not ideal. The game is now kicked off, so the Raptor is in the air. My Raptor's loaded out with 2 short-range missiles, 2, well, medium/long-range AMRAAMs, and 2 AIM-260s, which are the really long-range missiles, out to 9 kilometers. Those missiles are slightly slower, but they do give me that additional range, maybe keeping my bird outside of their range. Surprisingly, though, no air contacts. Guastatore also has his F-22 up, and he too is not detecting anything. We do finally find one drone. This might have been a problem. Thankfully, I didn't get a whole lot of anti-air response, but that could definitely have been a kite. What I do find here is this helicopter. The F-22 immediately takes it out, and I'm going to try and fly away, and then back to my own lines to pull that Raptor back. I don't know how much more anti-air is coming in. Maybe they're going to spawn in some fighters. I don't really want to find out the hard way. Now, let's spread out my infantry, make sure I don't have everybody in the same building. If I do, I might find that one airstrike, one cruise missile, or one bit of artillery is going to ruin my whole day. So let's not. On the flank, we got a little bird, dropping in some scouts, and you can see that unfortunately the other F-22 from Guastatore did get taken out. Unfortunate, but so be it. I'm going to fly in my seed aircraft to see if I can take out some of their radar installations before they're able to set up properly. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. It seems that earlier game, it's a little easier to take out enemy AA because it's not as saturated. Later game, when people have their position set up, especially with lots more AA, it just gets a lot more difficult. Now over here, scouts holding Alt to figure out what line of sight is going to be and where I get the best line of sight. The scouts for this role aren't great. Yes, they spot a lot, I'll give you that. They unfortunately don't have a javelin. And that means that they cannot... Actually, don't they have a javelin? That means that they can't reach out very far. A wide open area like that does lend itself to a tow missile. That's something I don't really have in this deck, so that's unfortunate. F-35 throws a missile, and the missile, there we go, gets intercepted. The other one is also going to get targeted. And in the meanwhile, I'm seeing some vehicles, and there you go. I have no real option to deal with that, other than waiting for these guys to get into range of javelins. Which isn't great. So, let's get the F-35 out of trouble. Yes, or not. Little Bird might be able to pick up the pilot, and that should slow down, or actually speed up, sorry, that should speed up the respawn of my plane. You can see that my infantry is taking a bit of damage there. And unfortunately, I really only have some troopers with a javelin capable of lashing out at those guys. I do need to change that in my opener. I don't have a way to just lash out. Towards the middle of the map where that pilot is, I do see a bunch of AA. And, moreover, one of my allies has spotted some really valuable targets. So he's over there wreaking havoc with the Comanche, getting quite a few high-end arty kills. So flying in, early game, again with the Comanche, definitely possible. Make sure nobody has set up their AA, and maybe you can get away with it. In the meanwhile, on the left flank, my scouts are engaged, and by the looks of it, they're not having a great time against either Radvetka. Probably because there's 2 of them and 1 of me. So that won't work. Now, let's see, what else can we call in? I've got 615 points. My income is 248. The game works with a sort of decreasing / balancing model. The more units you have on the map, the less your income is. This allows you to come back in later stages of the game, because it means that if you lose a ton of units, it's not the end of the match. Time to retest this Comanche to engage that Mi-24P Phantom, because I am fairly sure they're dropping something. And I really don't want that to go here. And this is why exactly I love the Comanche with its high speed, its stealth factor, and its ability to carry air-to-air missiles. Because boom, there goes your helicopter. I still have other options, I still have my Hellfires, I got my gun, so I can still engage the Rozvedka if and when I get to it. As for points, let's start spending a bit more. Time to call in some additional units. The pilot's going to go into the little bird there. And take note on this map where your units spawn in. They tend to want to drive along the highway as far as they possibly can. That is a bit of a problem, because sometimes if you don't have that cap, if you don't have the control point, you might drive right through the enemy's front line and you'll realize that at some point, hey, I called in units, where are they? And they just didn't arrive. Once again, Comanche going to town here, engaging the Rozvedka, and you can just see them melting very quickly. And in the meanwhile, it is also engaging a transport. Gotta love these things. Here we go. These stalkers, Strykers, are going right through Point Alpha, which we have not yet captured. But because they were on spawn / fast move, they decided that this was the most efficient route. I'm sure they're right. It's just not the safest route, and I would much prefer it if my units actually arrive. So keep that in mind for this map. This Comanche unfortunately does not have any additional AA. At this point it's becoming a bit moot because I don't have a helicopter anymore. So time to call in a unit, and I want to have at least some eyes over here. Now my Sentinel isn't armed with air-to-air, but the Reaper is, so that's why I called in that particular drone. The reason why I called those Strykers up is to have a bit of fire support for the infantry that I have in these buildings, and to potentially lash out at a bunch of the enemy anti-air. They're over towards, I'd say, the left flank of the highway, and they might present an opportunity to dash in with a couple of Strykers, get some kills, and pull right back. In the meanwhile, let's get a couple of Strykers in here, because this entire left flank of the map is open, and I don't like anything about that. Here we go, here's the Reaper, 2 Stingers, 4 Hellfires, and optics. So it is going to be drone-on-drone battles, and my drone wins. So now I can use it as a scout. Yes, there is still some anti-air around, and if I find that out, yeah. If I find that the hard way, I'll just mark it up, and maybe we can engage it later with artillery. I don't have any, but my teammates do, and we were communicating on Discord together to make sure that we're going to get some more efficiency out of our units. Let's call an additional unit. I want to get some Rangers snipers over here. I'm pretty blind towards the middle. I got those scouts. I'm also pretty blind towards the left because, well, that drone didn't survive for a very long time. So I also need to get some additional recon units out on the left flank. I find this left flank to be a bit scary. I don't know how many units are hiding in there, how much information they're spreading, and you can get pretty paranoid from that. If you don't know where the enemy is, you're going to have to spend a lot of time finding them, which means you're not focusing on the front line where really the action is happening. So in this case, oh, this is going to be problematic. We're coming under RD fire, and definitely so is my supply beam, or my supply location. So unfortunately, no supplies for those guys there who desperately needed them. In the meanwhile, my allies have captured Alpha, so with that we're now looking at a nice +2 point advantage if we maintain that for the rest of the phase. The phase still lasts a little under 7 minutes, so the enemy still has time to do something in return. This flying in with the snipers in the Little Bird is a little dangerous, because I don't know how much anti-air they have. If I find that they have anti-air, I might lose the little bird and the sniper team. So I should have done that a bit more securely. And meanwhile, there's a phantom flying in. Mi-24. And while I have my Raptor out here trying to hunt down something a bit more expensive, I also have one of the other ground-based AA vehicles coming in. You can see it coming down there on the road. That's the MML AIM-9. It is carrying 15 AIM-9s, and if something flies into its area of control, it's going to have a bad time. It's not radar guided, so I don't have to worry about seed aircraft. I just position it somewhere where it's going to be useful, and it's going to start eliminating helicopters and aircraft alike. The Strykers over here have taken a bit of damage, just even making it to the front line. So thankfully, as an ally, I had set up some resupplies. I can immediately get them fixed. Time to call in something else. What comes up next? Take note that I have the Stryker Dragoon and the Stryker ICV. The ICV is armed with a grenade launcher. The Stryker Dragoon is armed with the, 35 or 50 millimeter gun. It's a bit more punchy and can definitely eliminate light vehicles. The grenade launcher can't. It just simply doesn't do as well. It is very valuable when it comes to dealing with enemy infantry, though. Over towards the middle, you can see that there is quite some hefty fighting going on. And I didn't really take note of it that much, because I was mostly focused on the left. My F-22 is still around. It has launched exactly 2 missiles and done nothing else, but it is running a little low on fuel. So I'm going to try and bring it home and make sure I have it on standby, at least a little faster than I normally would. It is still targeted by an anti-air battery. Thankfully, it seems like the missile's running out of steam just before I leave the area. AA range in this game is scary, but hey, I got some retaliation of my own. I have cruise missiles sported by the Nighthawk here. Unfortunately, cruise missiles can be fairly easily intercepted. Artillery shells, however, cannot. I think it was Chancellor David over there who was able to get some shells in on that vehicle. And my cruise missiles, well, they never made it there, because my cruise missiles just got shot down. Interestingly, on this left flank, I didn't really find much, but I do know that there is something over there. I'm going to tell my scouts to take a position from where they can monitor the road and potentially do some damage, while my vehicle is going to continue its journey. Let's pull some of these scouts back, because they're definitely wounded, and they don't like this BMP one over there, so pull them back. And to make matters worse, there's a sorry, there's not a helicopter. There's a tank coming in to which I should bring a helicopter, neutralizing its abilities. One thing that I found with this particular deck, I don't have a lot of ATGMs, if any. I am going to bring a tow carrier, I think, at a later point. But my tow missiles, or rather my anti-tank missiles, are mostly being brought in by helicopters, which you can fairly easily shut down if you just have a halfway decent AA system. They're a bit of a glass cannon in this game, although once that cannon fires, yeah, you'll definitely do a lot of damage with it, most of the time. Comanche comes in, trying to deal with some units on the left, and surprisingly a helicopter shows up again. So that helicopter is going to be another snack, ideally, to my Apache. Sorry, Comanche. Comanche fires one missile into that boomerang, which neutralizes it with APS and promptly smokes up. No joy there, and unfortunately I only carry 4 missiles. The second vehicle also smoked up there, and you can see my infantry melts to this Mi-24K. That's a recon helicopter. Now it's going to be Comanche versus recon helicopter. The recon helo, the Mi-24K, I think doesn't have any AA missiles. And it's not really trying to figure out if it wants to fight, or if it can win with its own gun versus my missiles, because it most likely can't. But of course, he's kiting me over his own AA. So there's a lot of back and forth here between my my helos and his AA pushing me back, and then his helos advancing again. It just comes and goes like that. The Guardian has now arrived, the Apache. I have my Apache kitted out in this game as a sort of half and half. It's a gunship, rocket pods, as well as Hellfires, and those should be able to take on most threats. You can equip the Guardian with Stingers, but I don't have those set up in this case. Or maybe it's the other one, it's the longbow. Anyway, there's so many different units in this game that I still haven't figured all of them out, especially with the many configurations you can have. Helicopter comes in, My helicopter is safe, but the other one is not. And thankfully we did do some damage to those guys together. I think he has an Apache and a Comanche. My vehicles are okay. My infantry, however, is not in a great state, so I still need to get those guys fixed. And I still know that there's something over in those woods on the left. Arguably, it's not a very big deal, because it is not an objective. There is not a whole lot to be won there. But there is a lot to be lost. The enemy, if they keep advancing on that angle, can start cutting off my forces, and if I fall, my allies' forces. If they're able to get a reconnaissance unit closer to our spawn zone, they can start figuring out, this is what they're bringing in, this is what we need to counter with. So, as much as I want to start focusing a bit more on Gulf, or at least advancing to Gulf, I first need to control the surrounding zone. That's why I'm still out here. I want to have control of this area. You can see a couple of, I think, HIMARS missiles going out into the front line there on the right. My own trophy Stryker is also trying to deal some damage. I don't know if the the Stryker trophy. If the trophy actually does a whole lot of damage. As it stands, there is no combat log, like you do have, for example, in Warno, which says, hey, this unit did X amount of kills, or this unit was killed by. I don't know if the trophy is doing a whole lot of work. Sometimes you might see one of those skulls popping up saying, hey, the unit over there is dead. I simply don't yet know. The trophy is, however, forcing things to keep in motion, and I would love another, but I don't think I have one in this deck. As for the left, my scouts are in position, and they're immediately spotting a Strela, which is flying fairly dangerously far, which is getting fairly dangerously far through my lines, but I think the Guardian there made short work of it. And now I'm trying to push a shore rat into it, which of course is not going to work, so the shore rat has to get relocated. Another Comanche has to be brought in for its optics, and I still need to focus on this Stryker all the way in the back, and the snipers in the front to try and figure out high-value targets, not necessarily for myself, but also for my allies. Eliminating Tunguskas, eliminating missile positions, other anti-air positions. Very valuable things to go for. The enemy does have them nicely concealed between those patches of forests. Not well enough. I can still see them with those sniper teams. And the sniper teams might shoot, if only for the fact that I told them not to. They're told to hold fire. Over towards the left, you can see some advancements going on. We have a couple of units from red coming this way. And I'm going to try and push this Dragoon back. The Stryker shore rat is definitely at risk, so that needs to go. There's yet another helicopter flying in. And as there isn't that much AA on the left, I might be able to snipe that with the F-22 Raptor. And guess who it is? It's the M24K, probably repaired and eager to scout some more. And there it is, the battleship. Not something with 15 or 16-inch guns. No, this comes with, I think, a grenade launcher and a couple of tow missiles. Fairly capable platform. You just don't really want to get shot at, because you don't survive that. Now, as opposed to going for the Mi-24K, I found something more interesting over there. I think it's an Mi-28. That needs to go first. And as there is no enemy anti-air covering this, or no aircraft, my Raptor is doing a couple of missile attacks and then a strafing run. And unfortunately, that thing seems to survive by a slither of health. But another strafing run from the F-22 and it's down. So hey, it might be a very high generation fighter. It still needs a gun. At least that's what kind of saved me this time around. So let's get another Warpig out there on the left. I'm going to try and get some additional units on the left so I can close that gap off. Potentially bring some anti-air, get some additional recon in, and start pushing closer and closer and closer to Gulf. It's like slowly closing a noose around the enemy. Here you can see the battleship. I'm trying to find a decent position for it, which with all these tree lines in the way, isn't terribly easy. On the other hand, if you do find a good position where it can take some cover, it might dominate a fairly large area of the battle space, at least the area where I'm occupying, and it's providing a capability that I don't have. There, my snipers got killed, unfortunate, so I immediately try to replace them, get them in a Warpig, because I don't know about my own risk of anti-air there, so I don't want to chance that. There's a Boomerang, there's the Mi-24K. Let's also get some additional units. I can get another Comanche. I love the Comanche in this game. It is such a fantastic helicopter. It is so versatile, it is fast, it is stealthy, it is everything that I want in a helicopter. The Apache is great. I just love the Comanche better. Maybe because I grew up playing the game Comanche way back from the 2000s maybe? 2002? I'm not exactly sure when that came out. At this point, it's time to bring in some slightly heavier vehicles, although from a Stryker brigade / special forces group that isn't a whole lot. And I also want to bring in the Spooky. That's the AC-130U. Giving me 8 Hellfires, a couple of Griffin missiles, and the howitzer. I kind of forgot about which side my guns were on, which is the left. Take note how many flares this thing drops, by the way. It's ridiculous. I think my guns are on the left side of the fuselage, so I'm trying to turn the aircraft around and get some damage in. Unfortunately, that was a big hit from enemy anti-air. And whereas other aircraft can be put to lower altitude, that thing cannot. So unfortunately, that's the end of the Spooky. I've tried using it a few times. It doesn't seem to work that well for me. I asked some of the other guys, hey, how do you use the Spectre gunship, or the Spooky? They said, well, we use it as bait. Either to bait out enemy anti-air and then hit them with artillery, or to bait out enemy fighter response and then kill them with your own AA. Yeah, I guess it's a very expensive bait at that, doing about 270 to 300 points depending on loadout. But I guess it works. I haven't really seen it work in the way that I try to employ it, yo. So that's probably a skill issue on my part. But I am very much looking forward to trying to make that thing work once the game is actually fully released and I have more time with the game. Over the left, the Comanche once again holding the line, waiting for some additional teams to arrive. This is a special tactics team, the STT, armed with anti-air, because they keep flying helicopters around and I want to stop that. So that's why the STT is going to line up with the Comanche here, and immediately the Comanche neutralizes the incoming transport. The transport vomits out its Motostrelki with anti-air, so now I'm in trouble. Comanche pulls back, falls low behind the line, and I bring in some additional units to try and deal with it. Green Berets or Ranger Snipers are going to be ideally suited for this, because they have sniper rifles, and with that can start to eliminate units pretty safely from afar. And especially as I detect them sooner, that makes it all the better. Yeah, stealthy might want to disengage those and engage those. There we go. I have also tried the Green Berets in, I think, the XM25 loadout, and I didn't like it. Or sorry, no, that might have been Delta. Anyway, disregard that. Score-wise, how are we doing? We're on 2 points. We are looking to gain another 4. Kills-wise, we're fairly even with the enemy team. Kills are another way that you can gain points. If, for example, you have far more kills than the enemy team for a particular round, that's also a great way to gain points. My trophy's taking some fire, so time to bring that Stryker away from that position. Normally I should have shot and scot, well, shooted and scooted. Yeah, I didn't, and the enemy responded to that. I was trying to bring the Stryker back and get some additional supplies in for it so I can start repairing it. You can see it is very much on the edge of death, but thankfully it survived, so that's a couple 100 points that I don't have to rebuy. Get some scouts out, get the STT in position, and see if we can start pushing this flank a little bit, especially as Guastatore seemed to be paying attention to this area as well. He was using a deck that had some definite firepower, at least staying firepower over mine. As you can see, a couple of Abrams making their way towards the front line. Very valuable, this teamwork, because I could bring pretty decent infantry, and he could bring the big guns to support them. Not to hate on the Stryker, because I do like it. It just doesn't have the survivability that you might need on the front line. It is not a frontline unit, it's a flanker. That's what it does very well. And I'm trying to turn it into a tank, which is something it does not do very well. Guardian over here is going to have to wait until this Verba team has been eliminated, either by the Green Berets or by tanks or some combination of the above. There are more units coming in. There's a T-72B. There's another unit. I'm not sure exactly what that is. It's already getting engaged. That is probably due to the snipers. And the STT is going to give it a warm welcome if they decide they want to get closer. I don't think they can see me yet, or they don't have the range. Here we go. The Green Berets are in range. They're starting to take aim at those guys over there. Strykers getting repaired by a teammate of mine, very friendly. I think it was David who did that. So now I can start pushing that thing back into the fight. Let's get the scouts forward a bit, because the scouts do have short-range anti-tank weapon. The STT do not. The STT are focused on dealing with helicopters. And, in this case, infantry. Green Berets eliminating that team from afar, potentially opening up the way for helicopters to once again assist the infantry all the way out front. Until such a time, I'm going to have to use the Booker and my allies' tanks in order to make some progress. Here comes the Comanche again. There's also a Global Hawk coming in from David on the left. David seems to have the ability to play on many different parts of the map at the same time. I prefer for now to focus on smaller parts of the map and focus on the units that I have there so as not to lose them. But hopefully when I'm getting more time with the game, I'll get better at multi-managing fronts. Just figuring out what else is happening on the battlefield and figuring out if I can contribute there. What do we have coming in here? Su-22M4. I think that's a seed aircraft. Well, was a seed aircraft. Seed missiles can also be intercepted. So seed missiles aren't necessarily going to be the end of your AA. Not all AA can do it, but some AA certainly has the capacity of dealing with the incoming seed missile. And you'll see them just fire twice, potentially once to go for the missile and the second time to try and deal with the aircraft that sent it there. Unfortunately, the same can be said for the F-35, so you can see my missile just get intercepted right there. Seed is not quite how it performed in other games, where most of the time you simply can't stop them. As you can see, we're slowly but definitely pushing the enemy back, especially with the help of the Abrams. That is making a big, big difference here. My infantry is pushing up. I have a bit of everything. I have some scouting capability, I have some anti-infantry capability, I have anti-air, and I just need to keep moving units forward. You might see that I'm floating 1200 points. That's quite a lot. At the moment, I should have called in additional units, but I was too engaged in the fighting to really be figuring out that I should have called in units. This is once again one of those learning points for me. I need to go, hold on. At this point, you can start just taking a breath, figuring out what else you need, and start preparing for the next phase of the operation, because those units will take time to come in. Even if you call them in an Osprey, they will take time to come in. Better take that time now. Over towards this side, I did have a bit of an advance with the scouts and found an enemy stealth team, or at least two stealth teams. Immediately the trophy goes to work, the Booker engages, and potentially we can start pushing these guys back, or at least make their stay rather unpleasant. The Booker didn't really have a great rate of fire, but so far did seem to be doing fairly well. Stryker pushing forward, STT forward, scouts forward, the other scouts forward. The Booker can't really advance, or at least I shouldn't have advanced it. And I'm also bringing the Stryker SHORAD to make sure that enemy aircraft are going to be dissuaded from operating closely. Let's bring an Osprey, get some supplies in. I saw that some of my units had been damaged, some of the tanks had been damaged in the offensive, so I'm bringing in some supplies to fix that up. The Booker over here is getting hit, and I'm trying to pull it back. I think the smoke was not deployed by me, but by my ally in order to allow the safe return of the M10. Over here we have another unit, and once again I have no real capacity of going after it, because I simply don't have enough toes on this deck. That is a real weak spot of this deck. The way that I have it set up, that is. I need to have at least a couple of cheap toe launchers in there to suppress these guys from moving out into the forest and crossing the island. Well, crossing the open areas there. Golf slowly comes into range. And so far, we seem to be doing quite well. We're looking at a +4 if this persists. We're inching closer to a +6 if we also manage to get some additional kills. That has to happen in the next minute and 45 seconds, otherwise it won't matter. Comanche forward, and I'm starting to put a few too many eggs in one basket. There's a lot of units at the same location. And at the moment, I don't have an answer to a cruise missile. So if the enemy sends a couple of cruise missiles here, that's going to be a problem. Hello. The scouts find some infantry over there. And between themselves, as well as fire support, they make quick work of it. Here we go. Missile comes in. Where did that go? Unknown. It's just behind my screen. There we go. The Osprey is here fine. It is trying to resupply. I'm not the only one to drop off. My ally also dropped off supplies, which I think at the time I didn't quite notice. The enemy, however, did. And promptly blows it up. And somehow the Osprey survived. I'm not sure. It was just far enough away from the blast, I guess. But it did okay. And now I can use the supplies that it carries to actually repair it. Over there, towards Gulf, we're finding some high-value targets. S-300s. Immediately I'm pushing my Stryker through the forest to try and close the distance, get those things eliminated, and especially neutralize that supply battery. The Comanche over there gets intercepted by another aircraft. My shore rat tries to take aim at it, does some damage, and I think eventually takes it down. Come on. Yep, got it. Shore rat got the kill there. Nice work. Always keep your AA mobile after firing a couple shots. Even if your AA is capable of engaging cruise missiles, you might just evoke a response from the enemy using either just regular infantry or hefty artillery. One way or another, you're not going to quite enjoy it. At this point, we're looking at 8-0 because I think we just managed to get to the +2 from the kills before the turn timer, or the time went over. And that means we're looking at a +8. The enemy, however, can still come back. They can still come back from that. So don't find that, hey, I'm at a +8, I'm going to instantly win. No. If the enemy manages to, for example, get 2 caps more than we do, which, granted, is not easy, but not impossible, and if they can get a bunch of kills, then they can get a +12 this round, and they can win. They don't even have to do that, actually. They just have to get, for example, more kills and 2 caps, or 2 points worth of caps, as we currently have. They get a +9, and we lose. So, definitely don't consider yourself to have won the game after round 2 if you're on 8, 9, or 10 points. I'd say 10 is fairly safe. 9 could be a draw. 8? You're not there yet. You are not there yet. But most of the time, if you have a few points like this, you already have control over a large portion of the map. That helps. Because with that map control, you can then consider holding the line as opposed to just pushing farther. Over here we have some AA. I do use the Dragoon over there, which is the one with the autocannon, to try and eliminate that AA unit. That AA unit, for some reason, thinks it's a great idea to try and eliminate a Booker. I don't see how that would have ever worked, but it was giving it a fairly good try. Now, with the left flank slightly more secure, I did get the MC-130 to drop off another one of my Stryker MGS, because I didn't want to wait until they drove all the way over there. So, with the MC-10, I can now... sorry, the MC-130, I can now keep bringing in more forces towards the left faster, so long as there isn't an enemy ASF. Like that, for example. The only AA piece that I have here is still that Shorad. I should have brought in a Patriot, because the enemy... oh, actually, speaking of, I did bring in a Patriot. The Patriot should probably have been a bit farther forward, though. One thing that, as I'm watching this back, I'm noticing is that we have 1 Abrams left. Besides that, there are my own Strykers, the Stryker mobile gun system, that is, and my infantry. There is not a whole lot that I could have really done against a tank horde. If they wanted to go after me with, 5 to 6 tanks, they probably would have pushed me right out of the way and cleared out that entire line. I would not have been able to hold that. Because my infantry is pretty bad against a tank. At short range, yes, they can make it work. At longer range, no. that one Abrams would have been quickly overwhelmed, and had they pushed with more armor, they probably would have pushed us right out. And you can see that more armor is arriving. They're making it much more difficult for us to keep advancing there. They're trying to put a stop to it. There's even helicopters arriving there. My Comanche and Guardian are going to do some work here against these tanks. Some of these tanks are the cheaper variants. And that means they're not going to be as well protected. They might not have APS. No APS means you are vulnerable. I too, however, am vulnerable to that anti-air platform over there. Trying to get my Guardian and my Comanche away. When I'm getting shot at, I typically immediately press V to tell these guys to go low altitude, but unfortunately the Comanche does die. Time to get that Guardian repaired at that little fob that I have set up. And the rest of the units are still, well, fairly capable. So I can potentially use that that MGS over there to engage that Panzer. Would have been a nice kill, because then my helicopters can engage even more. You can see we're getting closer and closer and closer to Gulf, but we're not there yet. We're still looking at a +6 gain, with about 10 minutes for the enemy to turn that around. Kills-wise, we're looking pretty good. 43 versus 34. I don't exactly know how much more you need, but it could be a difference of 10%. Well, not 10%. Difference 1,000 points? Maybe? At any rate, now we're looking at a +9. So if we keep this up, we are sure to win. Let's get some additional aircraft in. I was considering calling in... There we go. Yeah, I was considering calling in the Spooky to see if I can actually get some damage in this time. The enemy AA has been somewhat suppressed, but they're not dead. And unfortunately, I think the second time around, yeah, the Raptor tried to take some of the heat. The Spooky... just... I don't know how to use this thing. I love the idea of the Spooky. And immediately, there we go. They're already getting engaged. Flare, 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 flare. It doesn't matter. Still gets hit. Loses about 85% of its health. Pilot survives, but the rest of it goes down. Bye-bye points. It was fun while it lasted. Troopers over here might be able to ambush that T-80 as it's pulling back. We can see a supply depot over there. Unfortunately, I kind of neglected my Stryker RD unit. So that's going to have to come back towards the front before it's going to be useful. Every now and then I try to do a sweep of my rear lines to figure out if there is anything that I need to still keep up towards the front. Some of the time there is, and if you have time, I would highly recommend that you do these sweeps. Not doing them means you're going to be, well, you're going to be doing yourself a disservice. You don't have the forces that you need, that's one, and two, you won't have the income that you need. So keep in mind, where are my forces? Do I need to potentially pull them back to base? Do I need to resupply them? Do I need to move them up? If you can, always move up, because you can always fall back, but you cannot fall forward into the enemy lines. The enemy seems to have no real taste for using a whole lot of high-end units here. Over here, by the way, I tried to do a bombing run with an F-16. I think I didn't do it right, but I'm not sure why. Because this Apache is, this F-16 is using the Snake Eye bombs, which are bombs which are capable of getting dropped from low altitude. Somehow I couldn't get it done, so that's something I still have to work on. In the meanwhile, the Stryker ICV over there, I thought, well, why not? Let's just put it in there. Let's just see if we can get it into Gulf. If I can neutralize that cap. Cap-wise, you can see we are on 71%. We are getting so far ahead on kills that probably something massive has happened towards the middle. We're looking at a +9 there and plus another 6 from the caps. So I'd say we're doing fairly well. Time to get some additional troops in, the Delta Force. And here we go, the Stryker is engaging some AA teams. Unfortunately, the Stryker does not really have the longevity. Yes, it can definitely deal with an AA team. Not a problem. It can, however, not really deal with the friends of said AA team. Such as the ones that are coming in now. It's boom, 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 dead. Autocannons are not your friend, especially not if you have the Stryker ICV, which is, I think, the version that doesn't have the upscaled armor. I intentionally did not put that on there, so I could still airdrop it if I saw a need for that. Green Berets over there doing fantastic work trying to keep the enemy at bay. Unfortunately, they might have run a little low on ammo by that point. Should have resupplied them. And I just saw that now, but I don't think I actually caught that during the game. Now, as for Golf, pushing with one Stryker MGS like that is an awful idea. Because at this point, those other transports just continue driving past Golf, and you can see that they very, very quickly ate up my MGS without really any discernible result. Maybe some damage to that boomerang, but that's about it. So that was a very bad move. Had I kept that MGS back, maybe I could have gotten 1 or 2 shots off from cover. I do, however, have some helicopters standing by. Those are the Darkhawks, the ones that are more concealed but unarmed, and with that comes a bunch of Delta Force. Also, a couple of Bookers, if they can still make it to the front line. I kind of doubt it with 5 minutes left to go. Once I'm seeing 5 minutes, I start calling in things mostly by air. Either in the form of an aircraft going for a drop, or in the sense of I'm going to call in units which are mounted inside of a helicopter. Otherwise, your units just don't arrive on the front line in time. I still did have this MGS. And this is going to come in useful as there are a couple of transports coming down the line. So those are fair game, and I can probably target those. I really did want to make a push on Golf. I just didn't really have the means. And unfortunately, this Stryker MGS doesn't have the ROF nor the armor to sustain any hits from those incoming vehicles. So, I'm not sure. I like the idea of the MGS. It's just that it doesn't have the longevity. If you want to be able to push these things around the battlefield quickly, use them on airdrops, you cannot have armor. If you want them to have armor, you're sacrificing mobility. They'll never really get turned into a tank anyway. They're a quick flanking option, not a whole lot more than that. But, you know, I just like the idea of them. I want something fast, something mobile, something to get a couple of points, kill an arty unit, kill some AA and pull back. That is, however, not how I'm using them. And I haven't exactly found a way to use them as such. Not yet. Let's see how we're doing on points. We have lost a cap, I think, because we're only on a +3. We've also lost some units, so the enemy's definitely pulled it back, and now we are not looking at a +15, but at a +9. So the enemy's doing a little better. My Delta Force over here is taking a very, very serious punishment from the units which are coming at me. I don't really have an answer to those couple of transports. That's what the MGS are for, or at least in my book. The Bookers, the M10s, are also an option. It's just that I didn't have them in place in time, and you only get 2. So, arguably maybe a helicopter or 2 should have been the answer here. Should have been the way to go, and should have been the option to deal with those vehicles. And hey, maybe I just need to up-armor the Strykers. Maybe get some Strykers with an autocannon that I can airdrop, the ones that have the Dragoon, I think they call it. Drop those behind enemy lines, do some dashing, because you don't need a very big gun to deal with enemy AA. Or with arty. An autocannon will do just fine. What you can, however, get is a bit of an up-armored M8. Sorry, not the M8. The Stryker. And potentially have it outlast a transport, doing enough damage. And, well, I guess they'll just have to drive to the front line. Or, ideally, a flank, if that's where I need them. A couple of additional Rangers have arrived. Delta, in this case, is kitted out to deal with infantry, so the Rangers are very much needed to escort them and deal with enemy armor. Or, you know, transports, because even a transport is too much to chew up for Delta Force in their current configuration. Didn't have the right tools for the job. At this point, though, we're 2 minutes out. The enemy definitely pulled it back, because they did have, I think, a loss of 5,000 points or 4,000 points that were behind us, but look at them now. They're only 2,000 points behind, so they definitely did a good job coming back from that. Patriot, engaging that engaging that aerial unit, 1 and 2, and they're gone. Immediately I relocate. I was planning on resupplying and repairing that Patriot, but now that I've actually killed off that aircraft, I kind of want to move, because I don't really wish to find out if the enemy can actually deal with me. The Osprey, which I think are armed, because I happen to have a couple more points. It just murdered a pilot for not really any apparent reason. I guess we just don't really believe in capturing and potentially interrogating enemy pilots. At this point, another helicopter came in, and as you can see, it almost murdered the Osprey. F-22 tries to push in, finds that there's enemy AA in the area, and I try and pull it back. This thing danced around a lot of missiles and didn't take a scratch. More luck than anything else, because there's not a whole lot that you can actively do. There you go, second missile, hits the contact, but no kill. Still no hits on that F-22, but finally its luck ran out, and now she's hit. Unfortunately, still no real offensive on Gulf. Keep in mind, Gulf is closer to the enemy side than it is to mine. And that means you're going to take a little bit more time getting your forces over there. Your aircraft, your resupplies, your additional units, they're just going to take more time. So if you want to do an offensive, you can. You're just going to plan ahead and try and cut off enemy forces. And I guess that's what I should have done. And maybe let my ally capture the zone so that my flanking maneuver could work a little better. That's a bad end for Spooky. There we go. 12 points earned, and that's a plus 20, meaning it's a total victory. Bit of a roll that game, which, based on the ELO scores that I was seeing at the start of the game, I really wasn't expecting. Then again, if you got guys like NBK on your team, that makes things a lot easier. I did okay this game. I still feel like I have tons to learn. I don't usually play Wargame these days, so RTS and stuff is rusty. Which means there's an upward trend, or at least I hope there is one. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon for more Broken Arrow.